The 38th annual Good Friday service is currently underway in the Durban CBD. The procession starts in the city centre and will end with a service at the City Hall. Premier Nomusa Dube-Ncube and eThekwini Mayor Mxolisi Kaunda are also in attendance. Newzroom Afrika's Nobuhle Modise is there for us, and in fact you're watching a live shot now of the Durban City Hall where we find Nobuhle. And we heard some of the singing earlier on today, Nobuhle, early this morning, and I suppose we're going to see a whole lot more of these kind of services throughout the country, but what makes this one comparatively significant?
Indeed, we are going to see a lot more around the country, but the significance of this particular service is that it originally started in 1985 by the EThekwini Council of Churches, and that was in response, it was in support rather of the treason trialists at the time. So they made an application to one of the Durban Magistrates Court in order for them to be able to carry a cross throughout the Durban Central, and that will lead them to the Durban Central Prison at the time. And that was because there were about 16 treason trialists at the time who were from the United Democratic Front, and what they wanted to do was show their support of the injustices of the time. So right now that then became an annual thing, and right now the theme for this particular service is abundance. And I actually have the Reverend here, Reverend Ian Booth, who's one of the organizing committee members, and maybe he'll give us more context on today's message, because I understand that what they will be speaking about is what are the obstacles rather that are stopping people from reaching abundance. You will remember that the province as a whole has gone through a lot of tragedy. We've had the floods, we've had the looting, we've had COVID-19 as well. So those are some of the themes that will be explored here today. And when that procession starts with the cross, those carrying the cross will be along that theme. But let me bring in Reverend Ian Booth to expand on what I've just said. Thank you very much, Reverend, for joining us so early in the morning. Just speak to us about the significance of today and the theme.
Thank you very much. So in terms of our theme for today, we started focusing on all the negatives because we've always been about social justice. So we've talked about corruption, we've talked about load shedding, we've talked about unemployment, we've talked about gender-based violence. But we thought that's all negative if that's all we focus on. In the Gospels, we're promised life in all its fullness. So let's put a positive spin on the theme and say, what prevents us from achieving life in all its fullness? And that's load shedding, corruption, gender-based violence, crime, broken infrastructure, lack of service delivery. All of those negatives are the things that prevent us from living a life in full abundance. So we thought rather let's have a positive spin, but in that positive spin we can address all the social ills of our society. And we need to address the social ills because it's those social ills that prevent the people whom we serve from enjoying life in all its fullness.
All right, and then just speak to us about what is going to happen here today. I know that at 5:30 there was the meditation, and then at 6 o'clock that procession is supposed to start. Please speak to us about the significance of carrying the cross as you take that walk around the CBD.
Okay. So the service has actually started at 6. At 7 we start the procession through the streets. Now, the procession, the original service in 1985 started at Central Methodist Church, which is just over here, and went to the Central Prison, which is just around the corner. The procession was in silence because that was the only way they could get permission for it. What they did discover in 1985, that there was suddenly a whole lot of white men fixing manholes in the Durban CBD at 6 o'clock in the morning. So we knew who they were. But it went to the prison, and they stood outside the prison singing hymns, and they heard the response from inside singing hymns. So there was a connection. But that started the tradition. We maintain the tradition of a silent procession through the streets. The significance of carrying the cross is it's following the journey of Jesus to Calvary. And what we do each year is we identify certain groups of people. So this year we have some of the members of the EThekwini Council, we have youth, We have women who are victims of gender-based violence. We have people from the April 22 floods who are still living in borrowed accommodation, some of them in the Astra Hotel in the city centre. We have a group of Abashlali, Pasem Jondolo members. We have a group of foreigners. We have a group of church leaders, and we end with a group of civic leaders. At the end of the procession, we then flower the cross. So we fix our ACs to the cross and put flowers on it. In other words, bring an empty cross to life. And
lastly, who will be heading the sermon today?
So the Reverend Musa Zondi, who is the chair of Diaconia Council of Churches, is anchoring the service. And then each of us will have our different parts to play.
Thank you very much. That is Reverend Ian Booth, who's one of the members of the organizing committee of the annual Good Friday service. And just to remind viewers that in 1985, that particular procession that took place to the Durban Central Prison was headed at the time by Archbishop Dennis Hurley.
Certainly sounds like a site that is rich in history. Nobuhle Modise, thanks very much indeed for bringing that to us, live to us there from just outside the Durban City Hall and of course Durban.